Hello everyone, welcome to Tutorials by Decade. My name is Decade, and in this video we are going to work on getting our enemies a little bit of a health system so that way we can actually do some damage to them. And then the next video we're going to work on damaging the player. Then we're going to work on the enemies, the slime chasing the player. Then we'll work on a UI. We might not do that in that order, but nonetheless, that's the plan for my next few videos. But before I begin, if you followed this series and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, as I have videos like this coming out all the time, and I don't want you to miss anything. Also, if you like this video at the end, make sure you give it a big old thumbs up. It does help me out, and I do appreciate it. But with all that out of the way, let's get to it. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we want to create a tag for our enemies. So up here where it says tag, we're just going to go and hit add tag. And then where we see this stuff right here, we're just going to hit the plus. Then we're just going to do enemy. Simple enough. After you do that, you got to go back to your slime and then actually apply the tag. So that's the first thing that we need to do. The next thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create a script. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to, where are we going to go? We're going to go to our player, and we're going to right click in here, and we're going to create a folder. And then in here, we're just going to put weapons. And then inside weapons, we're going to right click, create mono behavior script. And here, we're just going to put sword stats. Once this compiles here, we will open that up. And we will get to work. So for sword stats, this is going to be where the amount of damage you do is done. If you want to upgrade your swords, we're going to do that here as well. We're not going to get too much into it in this video. We're just going to get it set up for the upgrades. But for starters, let's do header sword power. And then tooltip. Oh, what happened there? There we go. Tooltip. The level of the sword. And then default is 0, not 0, 0. There we go. And then we're going to serialize the field. I am just having a hard time today, aren't I? There we go. Private int sword level, and we're going to default it to 0. We're going to do another tooltip here, and this is going to be the base damage at level 0. Again, we're going to serialize the field, and then we'll do a private int base damage, and then we'll default that to 1. And then we're going to do tooltip extra damage per level. Then we're going to serialize the field, and then private int damage per level equals 1. So what these three variables are going to do, the first one, self-explanatory, that's the level of your sword. We're going to start that at 0, and you'll see why here in a little bit instead of starting it at 1. But we're going to start it at 0. So this is the base damage. So at level 0, you're going to be at 1. And then every time the sword levels up, we're going to add 1 damage to it. Of course, we can always change these numbers. I wouldn't necessarily change the sword level, but the other stuff we could always change, but it just makes sense just to do things by 1. So now what we have to do is we have to make these things public so that way other scripts can access them for upgrading the sword or doing damage. So in order to do that, we're going to do public int sword level, then equals with the little arrow there, and then sword level. We're going to do the same thing for damage. So current damage equals base damage plus, and then in parentheses here, sword level times damage per level. So this is the reason why we're doing 0 first, because sword level is going to be 0. So 0 times 1 is 0, so base damage plus 0 equals the base damage. But if the sword level was 1, 1 times 1 is 1, base damage is also 1, so 1 plus 1 would equal 2. And then just for fun, if the sword level was, say, 5, so 5 times 1 would be 5 plus base damage, so 5 plus 1 would be 6. So that's why we are doing the sword level at 0. Excuse me. So now we need to do a couple public things here. So public void upgrade, and then int amount equals 1. So this is going to be to upgrade the sword. And again, we'll probably call this from another script, which is why we're doing this here. Math f dot max, and then we're going to choose between either 0 or sword level plus amount. And that's all we need to do there. And then we also need to do a public void set level. This is going to be for manually setting the level, for like loading the game and things like that. So what we'll do is sword level equals mathf dot max 0 and level. And for the sword stat script, that should be all we need to do. So make sure you hit Control S or Command S to save it. And we don't need to do anything for damage because technically we're already doing that right here. So yeah, we don't need to do anything else here. So we can shrink this, and then we can work on our next script. So we're going to create mono behavior script, and we're going to call this one sword hitbox. Shrink that back, let Unity do its thing. And once that's done, we're going to open that up. And there's a few things that we need to do here. So first things first, up in using here, we're going to do using system.collections.generic. And then we also are going to require something here. So require component, type of, and then we're going to just do a collider 2D. That way we can't accidentally put this on something. Ignore my phone. That way we can't accidentally put it on something that it doesn't belong on. Matter of fact, let me, I have a feeling that's going to go off a couple more times, so I'm just going to silence my phone. All right. So let's get to work in here, and first we're going to do a header, and we're going to do targeting. And then the tooltip is going to be the enemies. And we're going to serialize the field. And in here, we're going to do a private string enemy tag equals enemy. And then here, what we're going to do is a little bit of a fallback, just in case for whatever reason we forget to do something with that other script. We have a little safety here, but it's only going to be used if no sword stats are found. Okay, then we're going to serialize the field, not hide that in the inspector, go away. There we go. And then private int fallback damage equals 1. Now we need to do private sword stats. That way we have a reference to that script. And then this is going to be something new that we haven't done before. So I'm going to explain it here, but we're going to prevent hitting the same enemy multiple times during one swing. So before I go any further, what we're going to do here is we're going to essentially create a small little memory loop. So the reason why we're doing this, let me shrink this and go into here real fast. And let's go to our sword attack and let's just activate down real fast. Why don't I see the polygon collider? Because I don't have that on. Anyway, so whenever we activate one of these, whether it be down, left, up, or right, we have our little polygon collider here that's set as a trigger, right? Well, depending on how long this is activated, it might accidentally run the script 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So while you intend to only do 1 damage to an enemy, you might end up doing like 6 damage to an enemy, because as long as the enemy is within this border, that script is going to keep running. So even though we have that script only running very, very quickly, it still might be enough to do 2 or 3 damage per swing. So instead of doing that, what we're going to do is we are going to have a little bit of a memory system put into place where we hit it once and then we ignore it. And after that, we'll reset the memory and start it all over again. That way we're not hitting an enemy 2 or 3, 4 or 5 times in one swing. So in order to do this, we need to do a private read only hash set base enemy hit this swing equals new, and it already kind of wanted to fill it out for me, so I'm just going to hit tab and tab again to fill it all out, but new hash set base enemy. So what we're doing there is we're just creating a temporary memory. And again, and you'll see how this works once we get to it, but if we hit the enemy, we're going to add the enemy to the memory, and then when the swing is done, before the next swing, we're going to reset the memory so that way we can hit the enemy again. Once again, I will show you how to do that in just a moment. But first, we need to do a void, private void awake. And in here, we're going to do var clo, so variable collider equals get component, and again, it already wants to fill it out for me, but get component collider 2D. And then what we're going to do is that collider, we're going to set to is trigger, just in case if we're messing around in the inspector and accidentally uncheck is trigger, this will always make sure that that is set as a trigger. Now here is where we're going to find the sword stats on the parent object. So I'm not sure if we've, I know we've gotten components off of the object that we're working on, but I'm not sure if we've ever done a parent one. And it's pretty much the same thing. What we do is we put sword stats equals get component in parent, and then sword stats. So again, it's pretty much the exact same thing, but instead of just get component, we do get component in parent. That's all that is there. And if you're confused by like parent or children or anything like that, I'll explain it once we get back into Unity. And then if sword stats is null, meaning for whatever reason we cannot find it, then we're just going to put a debug dot log warning. And then we're just going to do the little money symbol here. And then name. No sword stats found in parent using fallback damage. So just a little console warning there that if for whatever reason it can't find the sword stats, then we will fall back to use base damage there, the fallback damage. So, on to the memory thing. What we need to do is private void on enable. So every time this script gets enabled, it is going to run this code. So let me rephrase that. Every time the game object gets enabled, it's going to run this code. And since the game object is currently disabled and gets enabled with the animation, every time we swing the sword, we're going to do hit this swing dot clear, and that's it. So that's going to clear the memory out. All right. Now let's actually hit our target here. So we're going to do private void on trigger enter 2D. And again, I like to change this to other. And in here, we're going to do if not other dot compare tag enemy tag. So in other words, if we're hitting something that is not tagged as an enemy, we're just going to return and not do anything. Now in here, we need to do base enemy equals other dot get component dot base enemy. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, we made a reference up here to the sword stats. Why can't we just do the same thing up there? In all reality, we can. It's just, it does a little bit more work, and it's just easier to do it right here whenever we get the collision, or should I say the trigger collision. So that's why we're doing that right there. And now what we're going to do is if enemy equals null, meaning we didn't find the enemy, then we're going to check if enemy is in other dot get component in parent. Just in case for whatever reason the script is in the parent object, which it shouldn't be, but we're just double checking anyway. And then after all those checks, if enemy is still null, meaning it doesn't exist, then again, we're just going to return. Otherwise, if there is an enemy and we found it and we actually hit it, we're going to do if hit this swing dot contains enemy. Then again, we're going to return because that means we already hit the enemy. Then lastly, we're going to do hit this swing dot add enemy, meaning that all of these other checks came back good. So we're actually hitting the enemy. We want to add the enemy to the memory so we don't accidentally hit it again, which is what this little block of code will do. And now we can take some damage. So int damage equals sword stats not equal null. And instead of creating like an if statement or anything, what we're going to do is we're just going to put a question mark and then sword stats dot current damage and then fallback damage. So what this little line is doing is we're creating a temporary variable that is an integer called damage. And damage is going to equal sword stats, or damage is going to equal whatever we do here. So first it's going to check to see if sword stats is not null, meaning we found sword stats. If it is, then that means it's going to use sword stats to do the damage. if sword stats is null, meaning it doesn't exist, then it's going to use fallback damage. One way or another, we are damaging the enemy. And then the last thing we need to do is enemy.takedamage.damage. So if you remember when we did the enemies, let's go to base enemy here. We created this block of code, right? So public virtual void take damage int amount. So what this means is, since this is public, we can call it here. So there it is, take damage. And then it's also asking for an integer. And then we're just pumping that integer in right there. So now, whenever we swing the sword, that trigger is going to go through and see if it collides with anything. If it collides with something, it's going to check to see if it is tagged as an enemy. If it's not tagged as an enemy, it's just going to return and do absolutely nothing. If it is tagged as an enemy, then we're going to do this code right here, and we are going to actually make sure that we get the enemy. And then if we don't find an enemy, it's going to check in the parent for the enemy. If there still isn't an enemy, it's just going to return. If it found the enemy, but we already hit the enemy, then it's just going to return. If all those checks are good, then we're going to add the enemy to memory, and then we're going to damage the enemy. So that is it for this script for now anyway. So we're just going to hit Control S or Command S. We're going to go back into Unity, and if it's still compiling for you, let it compile. The very first thing we're going to do is go to our slime and double check that our tag is enemy. Then we're going to go to each of our little attacks here, and then we're going to add the sword hitbox to all of them. And once you have that added, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to sword attack, and we're going to add the sword stats. So remember earlier when I was talking about how the sword hitbox is looking for the sword stats in the parent? Well, these are the children. This is the parent. But this is also a child, and this is a parent. So anything that is like underneath and like indented, those are the children, and anything that's kind of not indented to the left, that's the parent. So again, sword attack is parent, and these four are children. So if you have your hitbox on all four, and it's a good idea to double check, and if you have your sword stats on the sword attack, and if your slime is tagged as an enemy, we should be good to go. So let's give it a run. All is good. We can still move. We can still swing, still break the pot. There's our enemy, and boom, gone. So everything is now working. So let me stop this. Let me actually save the scene, and let me explain a couple things to you. What is happening right now is we have a sword that can damage breakable objects, and that can attack enemies. A lot later down the road, we'll add, well, I wouldn't say a lot later. Somewhere down the road, we're going to add loot tables. So whenever we break the pot or kill an enemy, we will actually get some, or potentially get some sort of reward, whether it be, a coin or health or magic or whatever. And then a lot later down the road, we will add effects when we kill the enemies or break the pots. So sound effects, we can do like death effects and things like that. There's a whole bunch of different things that we can do. But for right now, we're not going to do any of that because this is where I'm going to end this video. We now have an enemy that doesn't do much, just roams around the map, but we can kill the enemy. In the next video, I'm going to work on the enemy chasing the player, actually. And if I have time in that video, I will also do damaging the player. If I can get both of those done, then either the video after that or the video after that, I will do a UI to show player health and a few other things while we're at it. And then we can continue working on building the game some more. And believe it or not, we're pretty close to having a workable game. It might not have much depth, it might not have much playability, but by definition, we are very close to having a semi-complete game. So with all of that out of the way, I will say, if you've made it this far, thank you. If this video was helpful to you, please make sure to give it the big old thumbs up. I do appreciate it, and it does help me out. And as I say in every video, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe, as I have videos like this coming out all the time, and I don't want you to miss anything. Plus, it does help me out, and I greatly appreciate it. And with all of that out of the way, as always, thank you. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.